with the rise in graphic medicine, we're starting to see, medical schools using comics to teach content because medical students are actually able to retain it far better than the traditional textbooks.
Hey, welcome to The Caption Life, a podcast about the impact of comics and pop culture on life and society. From Texas, I'm your host, Kevin.
I'm James from Kentucky.
And I am Sean from Indiana.
Tonight we have the special honor of having a guest, Miss Jill Gerber, who is an award-winning educator of 20 years and a longtime advocate of using graphic literature in the curriculum to teach all learners. She is the history department chair at the Kairos Academy in St. Louis, which is a charter school. In addition to presenting workshops on integrating comics in the classroom, she also co-writes about innovative viewpoints on comics and kidlit in education on the blog Perceptive Gaze. I didn't want to say perspective gaze because I have a tendency to flub words like that. So see, I was going to do it again. Perceptive Gaze. So welcome, Jill, to the podcast.
Thanks, I'm excited.
I think we're going to kick off the night talking a little bit about some current events in comics, and one of those things was about some plays that Marvel has made available to educators. So, Jill, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Today, the New York Times broke the story that Marvel has written 3 plays geared towards high school students. One is Miss Marvel, so looking at Kamala Khan as the main character, and then another one is Thor and Loki, and then the third one is Squirrel Girl goes to college. I'm really excited about it. I think it's a way that Marvel is showing its interest in actually breaking into the school market and treating it like real literature. I think it'll be interesting to see what age levels they fall to. They're targeting it towards high school, but I could easily see middle schools, particularly with Miss Marvel, having some fun with putting on school productions. The pricing is pretty inexpensive from my understanding, $75 for per show, and then I think they have like a blanket license for $225, which is extremely reasonable. So I'm excited to see what kids do with these materials. Squirrel Girl and Miss Marvel are my 2 favorites. Loki, Thor, I'll be curious to see what kind of fight scenes that one has for kids.
Yeah, I was reading on the New York Times article today, and for Miss Marvel, it could be a really challenging play to perform. And a few things that they talked about in here was especially how to convey her power to change shape, shrink, grow. And I never really thought about that, about how that character would be portrayed on stage, because this is something so new, because no one's ever done it before. And I think that's just fantastic.
Yeah, and I like their suggestions of like shadow puppets, and I think that really adds a whole nother layer in terms of the creativity piece.
And I think that's one of the great things about presenting something on stage, because you don't have special effects to fill in the gaps. And so you have to use some imagination in order to pull off the story.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's a lot of fun opportunities for those who are interested in not just the acting part, but the technical theater part as well, too, because just like we all just said, trying to figure out ways to produce that in a live theatrical production, unless they happen to get an actress who can really shrink and grow and change shapes in real life, which, maybe that's out there. We don't know, right? But I think, that kind of presents something that's a little bit interesting, because then that's a little bit of a challenge that people can really think about. And, I don't know if they're going to provide like some guidance on that. But, I could see the teachers and the students going to be involved with the theater production. They'll be really excited about thinking about ways how they can simulate that in the theater production, whether it's using, lights or, mechanisms or any sort of other like technical production that they might think about in terms of trying to create those sort of scenarios and those presentations too. So.
Well, and hopefully it goes better than Spider-Man on Broadway.
Right.
I forgot all about that.
I never actually seen that. Was it bad?
No,
people got hurt.
Yeah, people got hurt.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, that's right. I remember that now. Yeah. Gotcha.
I do like the fact though that they're actually you could actually look at the complexity of the storylines and the characters beyond the special effects, and I think that's a battle that I always find trying to get comics, particularly superhero comics, into the classroom, is that people dismiss them as purely entertainment and don't look at the fact that these characters are rich. They are dealing with human issues, in addition to having these powers and that entertainment factor. So I think it's a plus for comics.
The other news, I guess, current event right now that is worth mentioning is that DC is kind of I guess shifting some infrastructure on how their printing is going. They're closing Vertigo, right? They're shutting down their Vertigo imprint, and they are going to DC Black Label. But then also, very excitingly, they are introducing some young adult and kids stuff. So I think we should talk about that.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to work. I liked their previous imprints, and I think that this is going to add maybe a level of confusion to those who already were kind of thinking about the other imprints. I also wonder how that's going to work for the DC imprint with the 13 and up, because there are comics in that world that might not be necessarily perfect for a 13-year-old. And so I think that's going to cause some issues for people trying to figure out how to place them. And I know they're putting age ranges on the comics as well, but that could be the kiss of death in my classroom. If I have a 14-year-old who maybe should be reading more of a 10-year-old level or 12 age range for content, I can't give them that book because they're going to go, this is not for me, I'm 14. Or and with parent issues, I hate age labels. I prefer developmental stages, because they're going to look at, and some of these books in the 8 to 12 are going to be great books, but if I'm in a middle school classroom, a lot of those kids aren't going to want them. They're going to say, oh, these are for babies, or these are for little kids. So I think I have some issues with it in terms of in the classroom. I also really don't like Black Label for an imprint, but I might just be picky.
Well, let's hit some of these questions that James shared with us and find out a little bit more about you, Jill. So, Jill, what drew you to comics in the first place?
Well, like all of us that are, teachers, we're always looking for ways to connect with our learners in our classrooms. And comics was the medium that did this the best, in my opinion, for the widest variety of kinds of learners. Most of my experience is in the humanities. And so this was a great way to reach my ESL students, the kids that love the pop culture aspect, the students who might have been, having reading issues, my Asperger kids who couldn't, connect through pragmatic language issues. So they learned social skills. So it was easier sometimes to empathize with a character than in prose. As a reader, I grew up around comics mostly. To be honest, middle grade horror I really, really liked. But it wasn't until my husband came back from San Diego Comic-Con way back and brought me home Terry Moore's Stranger in Paradise. And that series really hooked me with the way he developed female voices and its rich storytelling. And then after that, some women have shoe fetishes. I have comics fetishes. So, I mean, I buy tons and tons and tons of comics because I enjoy them and I enjoy the range of storytelling.
That's awesome. So when did you start to begin advocating for the use of comics in the classroom?
I don't remember when, probably over 10 years ago. If not a little longer than that. American Born Chinese by Jean Yang was one of the first books I brought in to actually teach as a whole class novel. But I also brought in a lot of comics as part of independent reading, bringing them in to do visual analysis early on. I have an art history background, so looking at visual thinking and visual literacy is something I've always kind of tried to bring in. Because it's accessible. It's everybody can kind of have an opinion, and then pushing those process questions of like why, what makes you think that, where do you see that? Comics is perfect for that. So you don't even need to bring in Renaissance art. You can bring in a comic strip. So I started bringing those in as well to lay foundational pieces to other books. So that the kids could understand either the theme, the conflict, or sometimes just the place. So probably about 10, 15 years.
That's awesome. One of the, just kind of full disclosure, so I'm probably going to deviate a little bit from the question that James sent you, but I think I was going to get to the heart of it.
Go for it.
So in what I've been seeing on Twitter and just like in other places about comic books in the classroom, there's obviously been some sort of discontent or misconceptions about using comics. And, there's some people that say like, it's not really teaching like literacy or reading, or it's childish and it has no real place for it in the classroom. So what with your background and someone who's incorporated comics in the classroom and have helped others, like what do you usually say to teachers or administrators that have like that's a little bit apprehensive to saying, okay, I'm going to use comics in the classroom? Like how do you kind of help them make that leap of faith for them?
Yeah, so depending on the audience, so if I'm talking to somebody that might be like K through 8, I'll talk about picture books, right? Nobody ever has an issue with bringing picture books into the classroom.
Right.
And for me, it's teaching exactly the same skills. In fact, there are some great picture books that are early comics. And so I really kind of try to focus in on that and how the same skills, if we're teaching picture books well, not just treating them as entertainment, how those are really rich educational experiences for students. If I'm talking to, say, like middle school to high school, I'll typically ask, well, are you college prep? If you're college prep, then let's talk about the fact that MIT, Stanford, Harvard, Columbia, all of these schools that we aspire our students to go to, they offer graphic novel classes. They offer visual literacy and media classes now. And if that doesn't sell them, I'll then talk about how much we consume on just a visual level because of iPhones and things like that. And what better way to teach those visual literacy and those critical thinking skills when we're talking about fake news and things like that, than to engage them where we can also talk about literacy and rich stories and rich characters and empathy and cultural competence. So it's kind of a twofer, or a way to do lots of different things and maximize the time. So it depends on who I'm talking to.
I've had the same conversations with administrators and other teachers about video learning and using video in the classroom. And I teach a class where kids are trying to find out what they want to be when they're older, and a lot of them, when they fill that out, when they fill that form out, they just want to be a YouTube star. They want to make YouTube videos. So, in all likelihood, we all can't be successful at that. But there is a market there for it. So you have to. I've had to design some curriculum so that they can understand like what does a good video look like, and build on that, because it's not like I don't even think it's like, wanting to be an actor or a famous sports star or whatever. Like, being a YouTube sensation is something that's feasible to them. They can hold it in their hands because they can do it now. And so, yeah, like we oftentimes have to change the minds of people who are who don't understand all the complexity of what content we're trying to push to the kids. And I think video instruction and teaching kids how to make videos and comics and using comics in the classroom, those are two chapters in the same book.
Well, and I think part of it too is also this idea, right? We don't know what the kids in our classroom's world is going to be as an adult. But if we can look at not only teaching them how to consume content, but also how to create content and empower them to be producers, then we're actually giving them transferable skills that they can use no matter what the world looks like. And I think that's where the visual literacy and the comics and video all come into play, is because that is their world. That's our world, right? I mean, and what we're consuming. It's no longer 5-paragraph essays. And so we need to make sure we're training the kids from really early age in terms of how to think about these things. And then also how do you communicate well using these different mediums? And comics is just another medium for doing it well. And, you look at it too, with the rise in graphic medicine, we're starting to see, medical schools using comics to teach content, because medical students are actually able to retain it far better than the traditional textbooks. So if it's good for medical students, then why aren't we looking at it for younger ages, other than we've got a whole range of administrators and teachers who just aren't comfortable with it?
That's it. Jill needs a bigger platform than our podcast, because she is the smartest person in all 4 of these rooms tonight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Like,
I just love it. I mean,
you mentioned a few minutes ago about the publishing companies need to be more forward thinking about their problem solving, and I get the feeling like they're all playing chess when they should. I mean, playing checkers when they should be playing chess. You have literally talked about issues and solutions to problems in education, things that I can use in my classroom that I never even realized before tonight. And like, I know that after an hour of this, I'm a better person for it. So I appreciate it greatly.
Yeah. No, it's been fascinating listening to you talk about this. I agree with Kevin. I've learned a lot from just having this conversation. So thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, and I'm excited you guys are doing this. I mean, this is another way to help teachers with their professional development. And so it's a service to all of the folks out there who, are thinking, oh, hey, these could be really cool, but not knowing where to start. And so I applaud you guys for putting in all this extra time on behalf of all the rest of us for professional development. And it's something I think that's also the benefit.
And our mothers. You and our mothers are very, very proud.
And that's probably it now.
Yeah, right
now. Not even our wives. Just Jill and our mothers.
I told my mom that when I was doing a podcast, she was like, "What's a podcast?"
Well, now you can have your students create podcasts.
That's true.
And then have Sean edit all of them.
No.
You do out there in your new role. I've been kind of keeping up with what you've been putting out there as of late with your new job, and it sounds exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I'm trying to keep up with the comic stuff too. So I'll be having some stuff coming out later in the year, just trying to kind of keep putting out ideas and professional development for teachers to find easily and free. and just trying to kind of push that a little bit. I'm presenting at Nerd Camp, so I'm one of only 2 graphic novel Nerd Camp workshops up in Michigan. So I'm really excited about kind of seeing how well that goes.
Fantastic. Yeah, those of us who, like to use comics in our classroom and things like that, we just have to get the word out there. So I know that I've got something coming up in Frankfurt July 18th to where I'll be the only person there presenting at the Kentucky History Educators Conference. I got an email about that a few months ago, and they're like, yeah, we're actually going to have you be the keynote for it.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, no pressure. So, and they're like, yeah, we're basically going to use yours to kind of talk about everything, and we're going to put you in that primetime keynote slot. I'm like, okay, no pressure, let's do this. And then I'll also be joining Sean to do a talk up at Indiana Comic-Con end of August. So that's going to be fantastic. So yeah, Jill, we just have to get out there and just spread the word.
Yep. And well, and I think, and keep, not giving in either. I mean, that's the piece. My last school, I had a very successful graphic novel elective, 2 full sections, almost all boys, but that's okay. And the kids loved it. I saw huge gains when I had them back in my American Lit class. And I sat down with my department chair to talk about electives. And he's like, well, Jill, that's kind of your thing. So I think maybe we should offer something a little more practical that the kids can use. And I'm like, all right, well, like what? And he wanted me to teach a business writing class. I don't even know what that means. So I knew it was time for me to go. And that was my leadership. Yeah, but we just got to keep pushing it.
Yep.
Convert them all.
Now, Jill, I want to ask you just one more thing before we wrap up here. We're going to kind of put you on the spot here just a bit. I want to know, what are your top 5 comics, your top 5 favorites all time?
Ooh, what age level?
Any.
What genre?
Any.
Well, I mean, I still love Strangers in Paradise. That I will always be one of my go-tos. I love Batwoman Elegy. I think that comic has so many layers to it, and it's just gorgeous. Favorite of all time. I'm trying to think what if I were on a desert island. Oh, that's so hard. It's like picking my favorite child.
That's easy to do when you only have 2.
Well, I've got 3. 3 very different kids. Trying to think what else. This is hard. Well, see, because I can sit and go to like books I just read too. Like I loved Berlin. It's a heavy book. I don't know if it'd be on my top of all time, but it's one of my favorites this year. I love, if you've got any, like, if you want books for like teenage girls, Kiss number 8, which just came out, is amazing. I love that one. I love American Born Chinese, always has a special place in my heart because it has so many layers to teach. So it's a really beautiful book to bring into the classroom. God, I don't know. That's tough.
That might be a lesson for us to like not ask that question in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I could, it's like, even if I broke it down by genre, it would be easier.
Right.
So before we go, Jill, why don't you let everybody know where they can contact you or reach out to you on social media?
The easiest place to find me is on Twitter, and it's at Gerber Jill. And then I also have my website, perceptivegaze.com, where there are articles and resources that I've written, as well as my friend who's a librarian.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on this evening and for sharing your vast well of knowledge with us. That's going to wrap up another episode of The Caption Life. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you listen to, and to follow us on social media at Caption Life.